Hello, welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online, recorded live on Twitch. Today we have a packed show because there's a lot going on in the game. We're going to start with talking about the Keepstar Showdown in 9TAC4 between the Imperium and the Northern Forces. Then we'll get on to information that CCP dropped about changes coming to the game in the form of Structures 2. So we have Billy here to talk about that, and we also have Plex live to talk about some of the stuff that led up to 9TAC4. So it's going to be a packed show. We have some people to introduce you to and some guests. So we'll get started with that. First, I would like to introduce Carneros.
Good morning, everyone. This is Carneros.
And Dirk McGurk.
Hey, what's going on? It's Dirk McGurk.
These are regulars. We're joined now as regular, a wormhole expert, and you know her as Keskora.
Hello, this is Keskora Yari.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to Talking in Stations.
Thanks,
we hope
it's
to
good
see
to
a
be
lot
here.
of you. Thanks. Actually, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Keskora Yari. I'm with the Corp POS Party, or POSB for short, in the Ember Sands Alliance. We are a low-class wormhole group. We live in a C4 wormhole, and we've been in wormhole space for about 4 years now. So we've we're wormholers through and through. I started in wormhole space pretty much as a brand new pilot with 2 million SP, and I never looked back. So wormholes are kind of my thing, basically.
That's awesome. Thanks again for joining our team. Okay, today for guests, we're going to have them introduce themselves. We'll start with Harvey Skywalker from PL.
Hi, I'm Harvey Skywalker, CEO of Higher Than Everest, a corp that only very recently joined PL, and previously I was the CEO of the Culture Alliance.
Oh, that's right. And we also have from Goonswarm Federation, Plex live.
Hi, my name is Plex Live. I'm from Goonswarm Federation. I'm a FC for Goonswarm. It's good to be here, guys.
Thanks. We also have, we're getting started here, Opner Dresden. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Opner Dresden. I'm the exec of Explicit Alliance, and I'm with the DRF.
Okay, cool. And we have, for later in the show...
Matter.
Yes.
Somebody's feedback through my
Also have for later in the show, when we talk about Structures 2, we have Villy.
Hello, I'm Villy, leadership figure of Test Alliance. Please ignore renowned fleet commander and warden of the South. How you doing?
The Warden of the South. Awesome. All right, cool. Glad to have you here. Let's start with the run-up to 9TAC4, since it looks like it could be one of the biggest battles this game has ever seen. We'll start with Plex. Why don't you tell us how this came to be?
This has kind of been a thing that's been brewing for quite a long time. A long while back, there was kind of like a big lull in the game. And it all kind of kicked off shortly after we managed to buy out Fountain, I think. I wasn't exactly sure on the details on how that happened, but we started doing some harassment up in the Cloud Ring area. Timers got changed to AU time zone, of which I just recently moved into. And so we decided to go up there and start doing some content harassment. And it's been escalating ever since. It all kind of kicked off during a SOV contest over MJY's iHub. And I think that was probably one of the first times there's been a major combat op based around an actual SOV contention timer. And it's all kind of snowballed from there to the point where we're now attacking the 9TAC4 Keepstar in Cloud Ring.
Yeah, can you take us into the battle that happened, I guess it was last Monday. So for the audience, we had the show on Sunday when there were super capitals in motion. So Monday, there was a big fight that took out a shield timer, which meant that 24 hours later, there was an armor timer, and that was a huge showdown. Tell us what happened during that fight.
The armor showdown that happened because the shield one was fairly uneventful. Obviously, nobody really knew we were going for the keep star 100%. And defending a shield timer is always hard. You're so limited on time. So the armor timer, everybody formed big for this thing. Everybody had all their big toys out. And we spent a long time positioning all of our assets up there because we had to bring everything up from Delve, obviously. Meanwhile, Pandemic Horde and their allies are a little bit closer to this keep star. We committed onto the grid with our subs, of which I proceeded to get immediately doomsdayed by the keep star. But shortly after this happened, PLNC Pandemic Horde committed some of their Titans to our carrier blob that had just signed in an attempt to boson the whole carrier fleet. This was a pretty scary move because we were all convinced that they had a pretty good shot of actually wiping out a good chunk of one of our carrier wings. Luckily for us, they kind of whiffed it, and I think they only got 1 or 2 guys.
I love that expression.
We then kind of committed hard on killing the Titans because personally myself, I saw those Titans come in, and then we dropped supers, and I was expecting this was going to be the switch that kind of set everything off. I was thinking, be attack R 2.0, this is happening, So
they'll jump in and save the Titans, that kind of thing?
Yeah. I was being optimistic. In hindsight, there were obvious suicide Titans for a boson, but in the moment, in the heat of the moment, I got pretty hyped up, and it looked like there was a possibility of people starting to escalate and keep going on stuff. But as most people know, the fight carried on. We killed 2 of the Titans, and in true Goon fashion, we let the 3rd one slip between our fingers because we're just that good at tackling people.
True Goon fashion, I think.
Yeah. We're not exactly known for being amazing at this game, are we? And yeah, then due to the tie-dye mechanics, but by the time we managed to get in position to actually start attacking the keep star again, it was pretty much repaired. Because for people that don't know, in tie-dye, your ships and all your modules and everything is slowed down, but timers such as reinforcement timers and stuff like that still operate in real time. So we're moving at somewhere between 5 and 10% time, and this tie-dye, the timer on the keep star is still actually just going at 100% time. We then repositioned. It looked like once it repaired, the hostile entities, they started to kind of slowly filter out, and we dropped our firebows and re-refed the thing. And then the next day did the armor timer, and now we're all in pre-hype to see what actually happens in a couple of days' time.
Right. That's coming up on Tuesday. It's going to be the 2nd round, and this time it's for the final timer. So all the chips are being pushed onto the table for this one, right?
Oh, yeah. I kind of hope so, This is something that is kind of rare in EVE, and it's one of the things that EVE kind of offers everybody that other games don't. And I want to see it happen, I want to see these big multiple 1,000-man fight happen that lasts probably a little bit too long, but if it's that rare, I'd rather have it last too long than not long enough.
All right.
I think I was going to say that I think we should kind of go back just a little bit. I mean, obviously what went down on Tuesday, there was a lot, there was a lot of hardware out there, staged outside the system, right? You got the 3200 in system. There was a whole bunch that was sitting outside waiting for something to go down that ultimately kind of never did. And then when it got reinforced again, so that we had to come back for the armor timer on Wednesday, right? There was no resistance. I mean, there was literally basically, no resistance at all. We could probably talk about how the Aeon miswarped and they couldn't even capitalize on that. And that Aeon ended up getting away, right? But there was no resistance. So it really calls into question whether or not this is something that is going to be, actively defend it. I
They
mean,
have evil plans. They're much more complicated than that.
yeah, well, maybe.
Well, I do remember seeing things going out on networks saying like they didn't want to force CTAs so often in a row. So maybe I'm not on that side, but maybe those guys are kind of preparing themselves and making sure everybody's ready to go 100% for the structure time.
Yep.
But that being said, structure timers are a risky business because if we blow that structure up, you lose all your anchoring or your tethering. Sorry.
Right, and as it stands, you guys have surrounded the Keepstar with a bunch of Astra Hooses.
Yeah, well, he's got, I think, 10 Astra houses and 2 Fortizars on grid with it right now, with some pretty tasty names.
Oh my God, tell us about the names.
Well, the first Astra house is called 1 Astra house, and then 2 Astra house, and so on.
That's
I
awesome.
think there's a couple of Rotarus out there too.
I think Tezzy's been watching too much Sesame Street with his young one. Yeah, that's awesome naming.
Well, everyone knows goons do like to count.
All right. So thanks for bringing us up to date. I want to go back a little bit in time to talk about how this actually came to be. And last night we had a really interesting discussion between Killer B and Harvey Skywalker. I'm just going to call you Harvey.
Okay, I spelled it wrong. Come on. Skywalker. All right. Jedi.
Was that an actual accident?
No, of course not.
Okay, good.
Of course
All
not.
right. Yeah, so Harvey, you were CEO of The Culture. Tell us about yourself first, because you're new to the program.
I've been playing for a long time. I used to be a pirate in my early days in low sec Iridia. Then my first sort of dabble in 0-0, I went and joined Brick Squad, and then I fairly quickly ended up FCing there. So I sort of was like the main guy in Brick Squad for quite a few years, and we captured Geminate and lost it a few times. That was all good fun. Then I created Higher Than Everest, or Peak, the corp I'm in now, and did some more in Brick Squad. And then we left there, and I took us to BL. We were probably joined BL like at the maybe just before it was at its sort of its height of power, and perhaps just on the end of when it was full of the coolest people, or maybe had the coolest dudes around. But we stayed with BL right until the end, and it was BL that and Elo that took us to Fountain originally. And then, the BL story, I think, has been thrashed over. So that petered out, and I decided that I didn't want to be a nomad anymore. Maybe not forever. I just thought, I've done nomad for quite a while. We've lived in NPC stations. I've had pretty much no real skin in the game, I think is the saying. We were always in NPC stations. The worst that could happen was that we would get hell camped, and goons did it to us in Venal a couple of times, and we would just either play something else. There was no PUBG back then, but we would play something else, or we would jump clone somewhere else or something. And I decided I just wanted to go back to what I remembered from Brick Squad, of where you lived in your space, and that added a level of risk, that added a level of excitement. And I thought, I want to go back to doing that. And I tried to persuade BL to not go to low sec, which was the plan at the time. But it wasn't happening. Elo wasn't there, so that's just history. So I created the culture. There were a few corps that wanted to stay in Fountain as well. We basically, BL owned all the moons. We know that Fountain was very, very rich in moons, and so there was a good incentive for some corps to stay, should I say. And we made the culture, and we had a really good run of it. It was great fun. We stayed, this is going to liven people up. We stayed as independently as we could, I think, and did our own thing for the most part, had our own little wars. But it got to the point basically where we had sort of bullied everyone around us that was of equal size or smaller, or they all banded together and things like that. We messed around with, Losechner, Schlopen in Iridia and various other groups. Goons had a few campaigns of sorts against us. It was all good fun. They aborted one of our Titans that was in build before we switched over to the Citadel constructions, the actual POS things. And, that they took some moons from us. We took them back. Everybody had a good bit of fun. It was risky, it felt when Goons first got sort of kicked out of the north and moved into Delve, everyone was a little bit worried. That was exciting. We were involved in World War B as well with TC, and we did our bit. We got things started early on. Tissue were in Fade bullying SMA. We did a little bit of bullying as well in amongst Cloud Ring, doing some Fozzie salve early on, and killing. I think we reinforced the first jump bridge iHub that then got killed, and it was like just the first couple of cracks. We were involved in that, and then we sent fleets over to help the allies or the money badgers in MTECO and everything. But then nearer the end, last year, September, I went away for the summer, came back. I'd probably neglected to provide enough alliance conflict and content, I think. We hadn't deployed. I came back from the summer. Tri was just sort of kicking off with their anti-blue donut, get rid of all their blues and kick over some sandcastles there, and everyone was sort of inspired by that. There was a bit of unrest. People were like, let's do something. I understood that we could go and do something, but we couldn't go and do something and have Fountain. You can't have your cake and eat it. And I know some groups manage that, like PL. I'm with PL now. We're down in the south in Provi fighting. PL has all its sub up north, but that's a complicated situation. I'm only fresh into PL. I don't know the full arrangements, but obviously the coalitions, PanFam, GOTG, they enable that to happen. But with TC, fairly isolated in Fountain, we didn't really have a coalition. There was no way we could just leave all our space and go on deployment. So, like I said, when I came back from holiday in the summer, I said, right, we're leaving. I said, we're leaving Fountain. We're gonna
Did you
take it
snap
all
your
down.
fingers like that?
I certainly did. Bang my fist on the table, snap my fingers, said, that's it, boys. We're going. And I said on the 24th of October, I think, was the patch day for the moon changes. And I said, we're going to be gone from Fountain then. Like, basically, you can imagine you come back, you haven't been, in amongst the lights, haven't been talking to any. I just sort of come back in. The first thing I said, that's what we're doing. And everyone's like bombarding me with questions, the CEOs and that. Oh, where are we going? I said, I don't know where we're going, don't know what we're going to do. What I do know is we're not going to be here on the 24th when the patch hits, because there's no moons here. We've had a good run in Fountain. The moons, it can't be understated, the amount of ISK that were coming out of the moons at that time. We, for a quite small entity, we held quite a lot of moons. Fountain was very rich. We also owned all of the ones in Outer Ring. We owned quite a few of the ones on and off in Iridia as well, depending on how much we were picking on LSH at the time. We owned a shitload. Excuse me, language.
That's all right. So you sold this off. So you have this land. You need to free yourselves from it. How did the bidding process go? Who are you going to give it to? How did that all happen?
Well, it's complicated. I mean, there wasn't so much a bidding war like that. We thought about it. I was happy to. I was basically going through the motions of taking everything down, basically pulling as much infrastructure down as I could to just to pull back as much ISK out of it that was possible, which was basically citadels. You can't take iHubs down. All the iHubs, they were going to be gone. As soon as you put an iHub down, basically you write that money off. That's gone, and they earn you that money back, 100-fold anyway. So that's irrelevant, really. But yeah, I wanted to take down on the citadels. We thought about it. We looked at it. It was getting increasingly complicated because I had I'd openly said to the Alliance, TC and everyone, I said, we're going. It wasn't like a secret thing. I said, and I probably made a mistake there, or I definitely made a mistake there, in that I tried to give all my guys enough time, enough warning that it wouldn't be a sort of a rout or a disorganized kind of, thing where people get, there's nothing worse in Eve than sort of going on holiday for a week and coming back and finding that your stuff's trapped and your alliance has moved and, all that sort of stuff. It's just a pain in the neck, isn't it? And
Didn't it all work out in the end? It seemed like it was orderly.
It did work out in the end, Kanash, yeah. It didn't work out how I envisaged it, because I sort of told everyone, this very thought out timeline. I said, by this date, you've got to stop building supers. By this date, you've got to do this. By then, hopefully all the citadels will be coming down. By this date, you've got to have all your clones in stations along the route that we're going to take. I said to everyone, as the time went on, we worked out we're going south. That's where Tri was. That's where all the fighting was going on down there. So I had all that worked out. But the thing is, when you say to people, line members, or it goes through to line members, we're leaving, what do? They pack up right then. And that's what they did. So everyone packed up. So obviously, as this open knowledge to the rest of Eve that, TC are leaving Fountain, and everyone with interest, basically, goons have an interest because it's their border. They're thinking, oh, right, okay, there's going to be a vacuum. Who's going to fill it? What's going to happen? We better get in there, the right thing to do. So they came over and started attacking. The Imperium, started making a push. They got a Fortizar down on the sort of Delve side of Fountain, which we didn't really own anything. We owned the moons in, but we didn't have SOV or important structures in. So they got a fort down that side of Fountain ready to attack. They started reinforcing some iHubs on the sort of border pocket in the middle of Fountain there. Basically, everybody that we had, had made a play for Fountain, all the little groups that had made a play and we had evicted. So like all the Russian groups, the Red Menace Coalition, they came back over and started pushing. Losichnaya made, they basically all blued each other and started pushing on TC from every direction they could. And that was fine by me. I was ready for that. I was sort of quite excited about that. So we had, we fought them all off basically for a good period of time, and that was fun. It was a bit tricky when I tried to sort of harness the full power of TC, that I'd sort of been used to, because everyone had packed up. My corp, had.
Let me actually cut you off because we're going to speed along here. But we have Killa B joining us, and we had a nice discussion last night, Harvey, Killa B, and I, and a few other people about the sale and what it actually meant. Because to understand how important this is, it created a pathway for Delve to get up to basically Cloud Ring in less than 30 minutes, 28 minutes, I believe, or 60 minutes with a jump included, but in some cooldown time. But essentially, it's a freeway from Delve all the way up to Cloud Ring, which is essentially Horde space, or at least Horde-backed space. And that's created the conflict that we have today.
And when I decided when we finally made the decision, the simplest thing was to sell the Keepstar to goons. It was the easiest and safest sort of secure way to do it. I kind of knew, that would be the thing. And in my mind, I was thinking, it would be good if goons extended themselves out past, if they got that Keepstar, I knew that they would extend out and start pushing north. And I thought, that would be good. If the goons come out of Delve, then they're vulnerable, and there's conflict, and that will be good. I didn't quite envisage that they would have such a powerful fleet by the time they did that move, right? That's quite some super and Titan blob that's in 9.4.
Yeah. I actually just wrote an article, and it's called, it's going to be published after the show. It's called We Need a Bigger Boat, and it's after Brody seeing the shark. He's chumming the waters, and this giant shark comes out of the water very quietly, and he's like, no, we're going to need a bigger boat. And that's what it felt like to be an NC.
I was just going to say, McLeod's actually got the map up on the screen there, and if he could maybe zoom in and just kind of show what that big thing is there, that big purple, that long purple line, right, from Delve to Fountain, that is the regional gate from J5A
ZXB to J5A, yeah.
Well, J5A to BTEC-D, right?
Yeah.
CXB to YTech2 AML.
Oh yeah, ZXB. Yeah.
Killer B, you basically thought, like, why wasn't this offered to NC or to somebody else, right?
Good morning.
Good job
morning.
waking up, man. I know you stayed out late.
I tried really hard. No, I mean, I think, yeah, like from a content point of view, I think it was the right move, anyways. Because, like I said, this way we have the conflict that we currently have, and it's fun. From a strategic standpoint, they probably could have offered it to us. I'm not sure. Like, I'm not 100% sure if we would have bought it, to be honest, because it's not as easy to defend as something like Cloud Ring is for us.
Yeah, I talked to Ratnikilla, and apparently Ratner says he did offer it. Ratner's my boy.
Goblin said he didn't, at least to Horde, but it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, now we have the conflict that we're looking at. But yeah, I mean, like I said, that this sale definitely sort of created this content, which is kind of fun because that kind of shows how like a decision of a single corp can influence the entirety of EVE's politics. Basically, it's pretty fun.
Right. Okay, let me ask this question, or Carneros, or I'll ask the question. How much did it sell for?
The Keepstar we sold 250 bill. Hull cost, the same price we bought it for. It had no rigs, so they got a free fitting without rigs.
And the service of having dropped it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. we dropped it, with the fear that you guys were going to come and kill it.
You guys could have cleaned the carpets first, though.
That's Ratner, he's always eating the Cheetos. He's got Toby in the background making a mess,
Just don't question any of the stains. Just don't think about it.
Yeah,
hey, I'm so pleased that you kept the name as well, right?
What is it called?
It's called The Player of Games.
The Player of Games, yes.
Which is a book by Ian M. Banks, who wrote the novels that are the culture novels, basically, which is where I got the name for the Alliance from, right?
It's a good name.
We named all our citadels. We named all our, like, big, fortizars after the books. And that was the best name, right? Because it's the Player of Games. We're playing a game. It just seemed like a good one. And they kept it, right? Because, yeah, I think everyone agrees it's a cool name.
That is a cool name. All right. So total, how much did it sell for?
There was like 9, maybe 10 other fortizars with it, with fits and stuff. 370. So we were literally just selling the 9 fortizars and 1 Keepstar, 370 bill.
And this comes after
them and a good one for us.
After having, presumably received some income from the Casino War / World War B.
Nope, no, we didn't get anything from the
okay.
Casino War.
Well, then that makes up for it.
All right, Killer B, can you assess what this next fight's going to look like, the 9TAC4 on Tuesday?
It's hard to predict depending on how Goons play it, but it could either be a big throwdown. It could also be just 2 super fleets sitting on their assorted citadels, sending fighters at each other or trying to kill each other's fighters. It could go either way.
Yeah,
I'm excited for it.
Well, somebody else here was an instrumental player in BTAC-R and Head GP and the Fountain War, and that is Villy, the FC from Test. He's formerly from Goonswarm, I believe, but now has been with Test quite a long time. You've been in these situations, Villy. What do you think is going to happen here in 9TAC4?
Well, pretty much as Killer B said, it's these fights and even the opportunity to set up for these fights are so extremely rare. It's extremely hard to create a situation where you can see those successful engages. I know with BTAC-R, we had a very narrow window of possible ways for that to start. We had talked about it for hours and hours and hours, days and weeks before, saying, we needed to start fight. We needed a non-preformed fight start. It needed to be between these hours and so on, and we needed to start the fight this way and that way. But with the Citadel tethering mechanics and the fact that everybody knows when the fight is going to start, it's really hard to just be like, they're formed up on the Keepstar, you're formed up on the Fortizar, and it's just like, all right, let's warp our Titans into the Keepstar, at 290 or whatever, probably. And let's go to town, guys. Good luck. It's just hard to make that decision. When you do so, you surrender so much tactical advantage and tactical play options that it just makes it really unlikely. Even if you feel that you're ahead by 20 or 100 Titans, It's a tough call to make. So I don't know if they will or not. It's
most of the time they're usually accidents or forced forced scenario that you were not. It wasn't a willful jump into battle, right?
no. There's willful starts. It's just that you need to. As I kind of wrote in that post, you need to create situations where one side feels that they have an advantage and the other side also feels they have an advantage or gets caught. It's rare that the field is the exact same on both sides and people are like, all right, let's go. And people in Eve just don't. Especially when it comes to your Titan Superfleet, nobody's going to take an honor brawl. You want to start the fight with an advantage, because if you don't start the fight with an advantage, then chances are you're paying a nasty price. And if you pay that nasty price, it's just hard to justify doing it, I guess you could say, just because your assets in Eve are real, and well, they're not real, but they have
They're
significant
meaningful.
value, and they're not instantly replaceable. So if you make mistakes, there are extreme consequences.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, the fight's going to happen on Tuesday, and a lot of people are taking the day off for this one. It has the potential to be the biggest fight that Eve has seen because there's so much hardware at stake. And the meaning of it is not really the keep star, I would assume. It's the fact that you have two super capital, mega coalitions so close to each other, within proximity of each other, that it is possible that it can happen. The intent is there on both sides. And so we'll just have to see. We'll know next week. This happened all within 1 week.
9 tech wars like Cuba.
Missile crisis, right? This all happened in 1 week. So the last time we had a show, this wasn't happening. And so now all focus is on it. But another thing, we can't forget there's more of the map. So I wanted to pivot over to Opner and ask what's been going on over in the DRF drone regions with Triumvirate.
Well, it has been a slow grind. We are doing war the old school way of just taking down iHubs continually, and now we just put Fortizar on their Keepstar and A24. So eventually we're going to use that to do something fun, I hope.
Yeah, is there a huge Australian time zone presence going on right now?
No, not really. Solar and Frat are having dust-ups that escalate really well, and so both sides are having a lot of fun there without a whole lot of bat phoning of too much people. Like Tri and DRF haven't been forming up major things for anything huge there. There hasn't been a lot of planned ops either way. It's been a lot of stuff of opportunity. You get pings, hey, there's a thing going down, because they're having a lot of fights routinely and no one wants to wear out anyone. So it gets sort of annoying because most of us are out of time zone, but would show up to those fights if we could. But at the same time, if all of us show up, those fights probably don't happen, and definitely don't happen in the same way. So
I gotcha.
Innsmother's going to be one of those interesting regions. I think I'm hoping we finally see the breakaway from people focusing so much on regions, which are very artificial and are completely meaningless, and focus more on light year ranges, which is supposedly what Frat says they're doing. And makes sense. They want to make sure they hold everything within light year ranges of their important systems.
Right. Well, here we are in January, and it seems like January is the month that Eve has these giant fights. So it just seems like all the omens are there. Around the board, there seems to be a lot of activity. So Eve PvP is just becoming something to be talked about again, which is really cool. But okay, thanks for this segment, guys. We're going to move on. Dirk?
Yeah?
You're not reading the notes. I want you to introduce...
Oh, sorry. I was reading a different thing. Hold on.
Structures 2 is okay. We're going to talk about Structures 2 because CCP dropped this on us right in the middle of all this activity, which is not good for shows like this one that wants to cover things in depth. But, maybe, Dirk, you could tell us about, just kick this one off for us.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of glad that they drop it on a Thursday. well, I mean, it gave me, less than 24 hours to be able to kind of react to it on open comms. But I mean, here we are 3 days later now. So I mean, I think that people have had a little bit more time to digest it. We've also had some responses from CCP Fozzie, who's been pretty active in the comments out on the forums associated with this. But yeah, I mean, this is something that they initially announced back at Eve Vegas. They gave a fairly decent outline, of where they were headed with this. Some of the stuff that's in it for Structures 2.0 is not necessarily shocking. They are going to be, at least as far as the proposal sits right now, allowing for you to be able to attack structures out there at any time with no vulnerability window on the initial attack. So, I think that is something that was kind of broadly being asked for out there. There were also some other things associated with this that I think were not necessary. Well, they're going to be changing kind of the vulnerability windows for when things come out of reinforcement, a bit, and they're also going to give you the ability to be able to use a hacking module to be able to gain intel on when the defender has set their reinforcement timer windows, so to speak.
Cool. Billy, you wrote a big piece on this for the EVE community. Can you tell us what your intent was?
Sure. The coalition I represent, which is Legacy, has been involved in clearing structures out of Catch, Stain, Esteria, Paragon Soul, Faith Abolus, Impasse on our initial way down to take the space we have. Then we're involved in clearing structures out of Stain, Catch, and Impasse later in the year. And then CO2 issues and that war happened, and then we're involved in clearing structures out of Impasse and Catch again. And then we've had a variety of troll Citadel work happening all over our space. And more recently, we've had PL and NC Doc come down, and we've had to clear structures out of Catch and Curse again. And we are incredibly invested in the Citadel mechanics because Citadels are absolutely aids to handle in most scenarios. So I can't stress how much the investment here is in our time and our mental states for this change to be at least a step in the right direction. So when I saw the update, and I literally actually stopped and went through it, and I took a pen and I wrote down each piece, and I kind of thought about it for a little bit, and I said, okay, this, yeah, it's good. This, it's good. As you see with the change, I make the comment, the changes on the timers, the activity states, fighters and war scramblers, none of those are exactly how I would envision it, but all of those changes are for the most part a positive as far as I can see. And then, I continued reading, and obviously, even before I read it, people had already brought to me the GTFO module things, and so I read it through, and then I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And then I kind of caught in my own the 5-minute anchoring timer issues, or the 5-minute refit. And at that point, I was just like, oh god, I don't want to spend another 6 months to a year of cleaning out citadels from our space in mechanics that are even worse than the current ones, which is so hard to believe that they could do that. The GTFO module, as it stands, is so rarely used that most people don't even understand just how fucking insane that module is. Because it's only used on Titans. It's only usable in a situation where the Titan is with 100 kilometers of subcaps, and in the normal range of scenarios, when that happens, the Titan is looking to kill the subcaps, not blow them away. But in a Citadel, the mechanics are so, and the objective of what the Citadel is trying to do is so totally different. And just giving it that module is mind-bogglingly it's mind-boggling.
I mean, for a module in a game as well, to literally just take you where you are trying to play the game and throw you away so you're over there, not really playing anymore. Just even on a Titan, it just seems like a bit of a silly thing to implement anywhere. I think, you want to come to this, if it was WoW or a dungeon or something, you want to come to this dungeon and do some things, and then there's a little thing that just gets you and chucks you back out again.
Yeah, and it like Test Alliance, and I wasn't there when this happened, but Test Alliance is, as far as I'm aware, the only alliance that has really had this used tactically against them during the Hakonnen fight. When I'm told we got hyper boost 6 times.
Yeah, like 4 or 5 times in a row.
Yeah, in tie-dye, and like I said, yeah, I wasn't there on my own, but I talked to a couple of the guys that were, and they just said it was absolutely disgusting. 3 of them just like 3 of the 6 people I talked to just like, yeah, I just stopped playing. Like what do you do when you're thrown away in the system in 10% tie-dye, and apparently there's some warp scramble when you land so that you can't move for another 30 seconds, which is like times 10% tie-dye, like 5 minutes, and then you have to spend another 10 minutes trying to warp back in your slow ass battleship or whatever else, and then you land and you just get pushed again. Like this is just not functionally good. And
when they
then to consider giving this module, to fucking Asbels, to Tataras, like, are you on crack, kids? Like, this is fucking insane. Like, even if you're not talking about the 10% tie-dye situation, which is like so egregious that it invalidates the usage of the mod. To me, it evaluates the module, practicality, just in that. But the way it affects the ability to defend your citadel is so bonkers. It just in regular no tie-dye situation, it's like, oh, your fleet's here, let me just boosh half of it away while the other half tries to fight the defenders. Let me, on a fucking 4-bill Asbel. Jesus.
Let me ask Carneros. Go ahead.
Well, just hold on real quick, because we should be clear here that Fozzie has responded to this and sounds like he's walked it way back to the point where I would actually be surprised now if this ever made it into the game. Although he did mention something about maybe still allowing it for high sec. But this sounds as though it has been walked back incredibly to the point where it's probably not coming.
I want to ask Carneros, who's a developer himself for a different company, is it possible that CCP put this in as something to take back, since they know anything they put in is going to get some resistance, that they put a little something that they could focus on, that everybody would focus on, that was so obviously bad, and then they wouldn't be able to take it back?
No. I actually don't think that they put stuff into the game or into the discussion to take back. They don't.
Really?
It's not in their culture.
Because they seem to do it so often that if they aren't, I kind of think that would be dumb.
I know. I know you're right. It does look like that. And there have been things that when I was a dev at CCP, I presented to the CSM that they said, oh, no. And I had to take it back 100%. And it never got to the public light, or you guys would all be yelling at me. But, the CSM shut it down. And and they did the right thing by doing it. But none of it had the intent of putting something there to get shut down. No.
Well, I mean, this reminds me very much of when they brought the Phoebe jump drive changes out, initially, right? And they were talking about how, what they were going to do to the jump freighter, and you probably had 300 pages of comments out there related to the jump freighter, and then everybody knew that was the CSM had told them, the comments were screaming, right? And then and then they walked that back. This feels like the same. We're throwing this shit against the wall that we know everybody is going to completely rail against, and then pull it back.
If you're in that meeting with the CSM and CCP, if you're in that meeting on the CCP side of the fence and you're putting something out to them and the CSM is reacting back to you and you don't know if they're giving you a reaction that is going to be passionate and 90% of the player base is going to agree, like the jump freighters, or if it's just going to be a mild thing that this is their opinion, but there's not going to be a hullabaloo behind it. You can't tell listening which one of those two conditions or where in the spectrum in between it's going to be.
Yeah, I think when the CSM next sit down to discuss it, they should just ask, one of the dev guys to just walk out of the room for 5 minutes and then come back like mid-discussion every couple of seconds. Maybe we'll understand. Just GTFO in for a minute.
This is the thing, though. When they come to the point of we're going to write a devlog, and I think it is easier to for them at this point with the player base where it is for them to ask for literally everything in the moon and then walk something back. So if there's in their mind somewhere like that might be interesting, should we push for it and should we talk about it at the opening? It's better for them to do that, because when they come back and say we've heard feedback, we all have gotten trained to the point where we just accept it. So this is a give and take thing where we have trained them to do this, they have trained us to accept it, and I'm kind of okay with it, and I don't think it's a horrible practice. And it's the same thing with Phoebe changes, where we took everything down to 5 light years. We got the jump freighter immediately before the patch even came in, and then eventually they came back and said 6 for supers and 7 for everything else and 10 for rooks. Congratulations. And everybody was happy about that change, even though net all of those ships still have lost a considerable amount of their range, right?
Well,
And
like,
that's what
that idea to me, like, yeah, that makes sense. But like, that makes sense when you've got a game that actually iterates in a time frame shorter than 6 months.
I agree. I agree that the length and the timing of it, which is I think influenced as much by Icelandic culture and business practices than anything else, but it's what it is.
And we should note that these changes are at least as proposed right now, depending on they're coming February 13th. I mean, so we are under a month before this new Structures 2.0 is going to hit.
Yeah, and that's something that kind
Real
of
quick,
like.
let me cut in here. I wanted to get Kaskora in. She's our wormhole expert. Good.
Well, I feel, I mean, this whole throwing out changes and walking it back kind of thing is really common with wormhole stuff. I mean, this is pretty much, we just assume that this is going to happen for us. They've announced a lot of changes in the past. There was one where they were going to make it so that you couldn't fleet warp to bookmarks. That was the change that was proposed at one point. And so we got a town hall together and like talked to the devs and convinced and told them like this is a horrible idea and this is why it's going to ruin wormhole space. Don't do it. And so I feel like that's just kind of normal for them. Like they throw out ideas, but this game is so massive. I mean, we forget sometimes just how many nuances there are in this game and we take it for granted. And the developers are they're still just humans. They can't know everything. So it's easier for them to propose ideas, get feedback and change than to sit there in their committees and obsess over every little detail themselves. Because at the end of the day, having this kind of community outreach is going to be the best way to get that feedback, instead of just like 5 guys sitting in a room trying to figure everything out themselves. So I don't know. I think I'm pretty used to it at this point with wormhole stuff.
I mean, what I will say to that just a little bit is the fact that, okay, so this dev blog came out, right, while the CSM is at the Winter Summit, while they're talking about it, because even in this dev blog, they talk about feedback from the CSM and things like that, right? It almost seems it'll be interesting to get some of that feedback from CSM members who were there at the time, because apparently they didn't even see this dev blog until like minutes before it went out, or maybe a couple hours or something like that.
Well, a lot of things are okay. We've got the CSM dev blog, CSM Summit next week. What are we going to prep for them? What are we going to present from our team to them? And that's like a mini deadline that pushes them to get some thinking together and organized and presented as a PowerPoint or a document of some sort. And then they go in and present, and then they get their feedback. And then this is a good time now. We have something to say. Why not put out a dev blog?
Yeah, but it'll just be interesting to hear from those CSM members what their feedback was specifically to GTFO in there. Like, were all of them sitting around that table going, "Are you insane?" As it relates to structure combat and timers and tie-dye, kind of the confluence of all those things, right? Is what made this just sort of a really bad idea.
The scary thing about this GTFO module is it pretty much just completely invalidates subcapitals in any of these engagements, because if you rely on your subcapitals to actually be the main reffing party of this timer, they can, if it's max tie-dye and you've got super fleets like standing off with each other on grid, you GTFO the subcaps, and by the time they manage to get back to the structure, it's repaired.
Now, I mean, outside of GTFO, there are some other things there, right? I mean, what does everybody seem to think about these other burst projector weapons that would normally be used by supercarriers, right, or can be used by supercarriers? What do we think about the addition of those?
I think as a replace.
Okay, I'll start again. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's mostly meaningless. The burst projector weapons are okay, but they're not incredibly strong. And basically, you're trading them for what was the void bomb launcher, which was insanely strong, and even the energy neutralization burst, which is the one that was most like linkable to the old void bombs, is not comparable in terms of the amount it newts and the way in which it fires. Where with the old void bomb, you target a ship and you fire the bombs, and you've just got a chain of bombs going at the thing. With the new energy bursts, even in tie-dye, they're not aimable to the same degree, and most of the other bursts are like the Dictor bubble burst is okay, and some of the other bursts have like slight tactical nuances, but for the most part, they're just okay.
I'm really excited for the Dictor bubble personally, just
So that-
because Dictors are my favorite ships in the game, and I bubble everything, so it's just really exciting for me personally. I just think it's fun. So
I
This is
think
what,
I
Villiers
think the
saying, though.
dictables are going to be like mainly, you're the wormhole expert here, but like I think they're going to be mainly an impact thing on wormholes, because as far as dictor bubble burst projection goes, whenever there's a big fight going on in K space, there's going to be 20, 30 supers at least throwing bubbles around. So it really doesn't make a difference.
I'm saying this with the full knowledge that probably all of the numbers are nowhere near final, especially because of the feedback. But the problem with Billy's right, the AOE weapons for super carriers are not that strong, and that's intentional from CCP because you can have 50, 100, 200 super carriers on field. They can make the structure ones a bit stronger because there's only ever going to be one on grid, but at the same time, the big thing with the super ones is the cycle time. You launch a bubble, and 2 minutes later, it only lasts 30 seconds, and 2 minutes later, you can launch another one. Like, that's not really effective for keeping anything long-term held down. So unless those numbers change pretty radically, these aren't going to be hugely effective on major fights. They're not going to be completely game changers. They're just going to be an additional thing you can do. The webbing one might be a little bit better. The target painter one is probably going to be a lot more effective for a lot of things, I think. That's just been my experience so far with a lot of the AoE stuff.
Some of it seems kind of a bit redundant as well. Like if you're going to use the bubbles or the webbers, like you can get a similar thing on a subcap fleet by pointing, scramming, and webbing the FC of the subs if you really want to web them down.
Totally.
Which is another change.
Yes, carry.
Well, I was going to say, which is another change that they're proposing, right, to the scrims and stuff. Is that it will have a
Cooldown.
Well, it'll last for 30 seconds and then have a 60-second cooldown, so that you can't just perma scram anybody anymore.
Yeah, which I hate. That is such a stupid idea. Like
It's
the lockdown of being able to control that one ship is not going to be able to leave the field at least with your structure, or 4 if you put out a full mid-slat on Astros. That has been an actually interesting mechanic to deal against and plan against and be like, I have to survive until this thing gets reinforced. So I don't like that we're losing that. Also, I think, you warp to somebody else's structure that you're not friendly with, you run the risk of them killing whatever you're warping in with unless you can reinforce that structure. And since the vulnerability window is 24, I think that should progress on.
actually, like I believe the
I see
opposite
it the
as
other
far
way,
as like
yeah.
the scram.
I'm with
means-
Plex.
Hold on, you're talking over each other. First,
Yeah.
we'll do Plex and then Harvey.
Like I actually think the other way, because like the scrambler and the web being such a long range is so oppressive on every single doctrine bar 3 or 4, and like it's made Eve into the state of the game where everybody has to run passive gun. Well, now that void bombs are gone, that might change, but everybody has to run a doctrine that can just hunker down on grid.
But I think without the
like,
newts, you're changing that a lot. Without the void bombs, you were changing that drastically.
Well, do you really think like a Serb fleet's going to be able to work? Because you scram the FC with one of them, then you scram the back FC with the next one that you've got. Oh, now your whole Serb fleet is stuck.
Yeah, like we ran Serb fleets early on before people figured out how awesome void bombs worked, and that was just by having changing anchors. And
Harvey,
it works.
Hold on, Harvey, do you want to get in on that?
Well, I think I agree with Plex that it was oppressive the way you basically knew as soon as you were going on, that was it. Once you were on that grid, you were there in that one spot until it was done or you were dead. It seems like with the whole limited time period, with the burst projecting of the bubble, it's sort of like the structure can grab you for a little bit, but if you want to hold someone forever or long enough to kill them or to get on top of them, you've then got to, get some people in spaceships to go out and take over. Say someone's attacking your citadel, and you want to drop on that fleet and kill them. You can use the citadel to just launch a bubble on them. 30 seconds, you get your Sino up, you get your guys in, and then your fleet takes over. It prevents that sort of non-committal of sort of shooting the thing for a little bit and then whopping off if you're getting jumped on by a load of baddies, which I don't mind. I think that's a good thing. Spaceships being involved as well as the Citadel is more people involved, and that's good in my book.
That's the thing, though. If you don't bring a fleet out to kill them, it doesn't matter if you're holding the FC on field. Like, they're still going to reinforce your structure, and then they're going to moonwalk out. So that fight is going to happen regardless, and having the lockdown ensures that the attacker is committed to the fight as well, because the defender is fully committed. He can't leave. He can't move the structure. So yeah, if we're going to have a fight, let's have a fight. And having 2 mid slots that you have to dedicate to keeping that fight there, I think is not an unfair trade-off.
Yeah, I guess it's the fact that it's shutting down the MWD and the MJD, right? That, it seems obvious to me that really that Citadel warp scrambler should be similar to a hick point, where it can be scripted to warp scramble at a shorter range and it long points to the full range. And, it probably should long point with the full hick strength as well, so that it can long point a super, that lands. An Aeon might accidentally warp down somewhere or...
Oh, not even accidentally. By the way, everything you just said on that, I completely agree. I would be totally in support of that kind of a change. If that's adding dynamic and complexity, I totally agree. That would be an awesome adjustment.
Let's let Billy back in here.
All right. So I'd be curious as to how many of you folks have been perma warp scrambled and webbed by a Fortizar before, or Fortizar Astras, whatever before, because I can assure you, it is some of the most toxic, annoying fucking shit when you're sitting there and you go 50 meters a second and you can do nothing. You can't move. You can slow boat at 50 meters a second for 300 fucking kilometers or 250 or whatever it is, and you're like hard, so you're gonna die, and you basically have to be prepared to FC for something different. But the thing is, if you show up, I generally FC from things like vultures or tengus or whatever. If you show up on that ship, you have to basically accept that. If I need to change my position or warp out or do anything, that I'm going to die because I can't leave. And that is a super negative thing, because it makes it so that people aren't willing to fight over things because they know that there's this sunk loss that they're going to take if there's a gunner. And
once they make that decision to go on grid, once you're there, like you say, and you're doing 50 meters a second, doesn't matter. You can't really make any more decisions about, dynamic decisions about your fleet then, because you made the first one, and that was to get in scram and web range, and that was it.
Yeah, and there's been multiple situations or multiple times where I think a week ago, NC Dot left to go up to some Provi timer back when the Oshit Fort was still up, and I was like, all right, let's go reinforce the Oshit Fort, and then I'm thinking, I can't really do that. I'll just get warp scrambled and webbed or whatever. And if they, turn around or get on a tight or anything, I basically have to fleet warp us out, and then I'm just dead, and we accomplish nothing. And they just get the herf about killing me. It's like it makes it harder to harass or to it just makes gameplay less engaging.
That's the thing. I think the way you're describing it ends up with a bad dynamic, but the idea that you're going to go harass a structure and to reinforce, I think, is maybe the bad way of thinking about it. You can't win the fight because if they come back, you're dead. That is right up from the outset. I say that is not the most positive experience I can imagine in Eve.
But that's exactly it. It
dropping
is
20 citadels and harassing. The whole game right now is based around harassment with these mechanics. Why can't we be able to harass offensively on the structures rather than them harassing just by dropping them?
Let's think. The problem is if they're there at the structure, they can defend the structure. That's what I'm saying. When you sum down everything Billy said, the end statement is if they come back, they can defend their structure.
Yes, but anybody could defend a structure. That's the thing. They're so fucking overpowered that if you have 20 or 30 guys, you could probably defend a structure against 100 in many cases. That might be a little oversimplification and might be a exaggeration.
That was the goal, though. That you wanted them to be a force multiplier for the defender, so that yes, smaller smaller fleets could defend a structure if they were on grid with it, because they have ceded the place of the fight. They are definitely going to be there for that structure's fight, right? And that was the point. And granted, some of it's kind of missed. And yeah, the medium structures especially create huge balance issues, and the fact they're so cheap that they're not actually worth killing from a pure blood sport perspective. And they're way powerful because they have tethering and docking and unlimited storage capacity. And that's kind of, I think, more of the problem.
But that's you're missing my point, which is that they have to be there. And what I'm saying is that because of the web and the warp scrambler, in many cases they don't, because it creates the threat where they can easily come back and get you. Like, they don't even have to be there to defend their structure in many ways.
Now, one of the other proposed changes they're talking about is extending the locking range out to 400 kilometers with the ability to upgrade and potentially get it out to 490 kilometers. What do you think about that?
It just feels like, kicking a dead horse. We were already super limited on what we can bring in as subs, and now, like, the very few sniper doctrines that could actually stay outside of that range are now, doomed as well. Like, it's making everything so linear and so consistent. Everybody either brings in, like, Macarials, Tempests, Typhoons. These are slow, brawly doctrines. There's no interesting kiting going on. There's no range management going on. It's just like, okay, we're committing to this one point, let's hope we win. And now they've even taken that away from a sniper doctrine.
That's the thing, you were already dealing with doctrines that were so dialed in because they had to be at the outside range of 250k. Like, that was already a point where we were niching ourselves into, in my opinion, really uninteresting doctrines. Like, that's the thing. A lot of us are saying we would like structure combat to actually be something where we can choose to bring in a legitimate brawling doctrine that is fast and has some mobility if the structures fit for it. Like, this is the thing. There is no counterplay. Like, it is, you bring something that sits outside of the structure's effective range. And if solving that problem, if the first step to that is, hey, we're going to make sure that the structure basically has range superiority over everything, you are not being limited by the locking power of the structure, I'm okay with that.
Are any of these things, Kaskora or Harvey, you do small gang warfare, how are these things affecting you guys? Are these just non-issues for you guys?
Well, I mean, the thing that perhaps not everybody realizes, I don't know, maybe they do, is, a lot of the times when you're out and about just in small gangs and, looking around for kills, a lot of your kills happen on a citadel where you're just a few guys and you warp over there. You either bump someone out of tether because they warped to the citadel and didn't dock and they were AFK, or they target you because you land on their citadel, and that all those kills and that little bit of gameplay could be potentially going away with the fact that the citadel's vulnerable the entire time and that warp scrambler is active all the time. I know it has a short period and then a delay for reactivation, which makes it not too bad. But at the moment, there is that aspect of gameplay where people fight on citadels without logi, without getting scrambled and locked down because the citadel isn't vulnerable, and you have a little scrap there, and it's good gameplay, it's good fun, it's hard going. The guys that are getting bumped off or have targeted you, they get to use the rest of the modules on the citadel if they put a gunner in. It's good gameplay, and whether it'll go away completely, it changes that a lot. You've got to consider that you can get locked right down, where you are. So, and generally small ganging, you're kiting. So that's the only thing I was thinking. Yeah.
Well,
Hold on,
can I
Plex.
quickly just add?
Oh yeah, go ahead to the small gang, sure.
Well, with the small gang thing, like, I agree with you. Like, bumping stuff off citadels and stuff like that, like with the AFK thing, is a good fun way to do stuff, and some of those small fights are great. But with the vulnerability timer being 100, 24/7 now, that's going to be super limited because that guy may be AFK, but if there's someone sitting in that structure, you try and bump, you're suddenly permascram any time in the game.
All right, Cass, wormholes?
Well, I mean, for wormholes, a lot of the way that we force fights is with structures. I mean, we don't really care about taking Sov or land or anything like that. Like, we honestly don't even care about taking the wormhole either. I mean, there's so many wormholes out there that I mean, sometimes you want to move in, but oftentimes it's not. So citadels are a way to basically create content for us, and having more of an force multiplier, I guess, with the citadels and ways, I think is probably a good thing. Right now, the doctrines that we use to take out citadels are very specific. I mean, they're like the long range Macarials that are able to kite around and stay out of the range. So by limiting that and making it that the lock range is higher, it almost kind of opens up more doors to doctrines in a way. I mean, I'm sure people are still going to find the specialized doctrines for it, but it adds a different element, which I think is nice. So we have lots of structures all over the place, and a lot of times the big fights in wormholes happen because of those structures. People will drop structures as a way to bait people out, which I think is nice. And so now it's a totally different element. It makes fighting that anchoring timer even more important. And I know when structures first came out, when they first announced the changes, I know someone asked in the Twitch comments about the only the 2-day window for the whole timer and stuff. Having them be vulnerable all the time is something that I think wormholers have been wanting for a long time, because it used to be when we did content sieges, it was a pause and it was a weekend. Like, we knew it, like, because you have to do hole control in order to lock everybody in the wormhole, in order to get that structure down. You can't like leave and sino back in. There's no way to do that. You're locked into that system. So having to force a whole group of people to stay in one system locked in for more than 3 days is asking a lot. I mean, a lot of people aren't going to do that because that's a lot of time. It gets kind of boring sitting there staring at a wormhole for hours in a day. So having something be vulnerable all the time where you could pick your target and your window, I think is really good. I'm really excited for these changes. I think it's awesome. So
yeah, I mean, it certainly gets it down to, I mean, what is it? If you go in and you scout the intel and you plan it right, I mean, you're talking 2 days, right, from start to finish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and granted, I mean, when those 2 days is going to be a big factor, because there's a couple different strategies on that. Either you could set it to the weekend where you're going to have the most people on to defend, but then the attacker's going to have the most people too. So there's going to be a lot of kind of tactics with that. Also, I mean, most wormholers have many structures, so they're going to spread that out too. So even though one structure will have a 2-day timer, if you really want to evict somebody, you're going to have to take out all the structures, which will take extended periods of time. So
now, since we are talking about wormholes here, we might as well just skip to another part that is coming on February 13th. Will be the ability to do moon mining in wormholes and 0.5 high-sec systems. So what does that mean? I mean, I assume that this is something that wormholers are rejoicing over.
I mean, it's pretty exciting. I mean, we have all these moons and wormholes, and beforehand, really the only reason we used them was for pos anchoring. I mean, that's why you wanted a wormhole with lots of moons back in the day, so you could anchor lots of poses. And now, I mean, we've got over 70 moons in our wormhole, and they're pointless right now. They're a place to warp to. That's cool, right? But so it's gonna be nice to have another element that we can utilize them for. And I know a lot of the industrialists are going to be really happy about that, because it's a lot of people have industrial setups in the lower class wormholes like 1s and 2s. So I think that it's going to be really great for them. And if anything, it's just more content opportunities, more people out
the mineral
in
market
wormholes.
is screaming over this decision, though. I think it's going to end up being a very negative thing industry-wise.
We're already going to be flooding it with what we have in K-Space, like the especially with just the moon goo. We're going to be bringing in so much more moon goo that was coming in.
No. The moon goo is immaterial because it's worthless moon goo that nobody cares about.
We're only getting the low moon goo. We're not getting the high stuff.
The problem is the minerals. It's the actual T1 minerals. Because here's the thing: if you drop into C1 with 60 wormhole or 60 moons, congratulations, you now have the ability to have 3 colossal belts every day. That's all you need. Like, this is a huge changeover, and you can go stack dozens and dozens of orcs in there, mine it out, and then ship it all back out, and it's not that oppressive. C2 would obviously be a lot easier on this, but
to see dozens of wormholes, you can't fit dozens of wormholes in a wormhole very easily.
Why?
That's because they can't jump into a low class wormhole. They can only jump.
Yeah, but you build them there, like all the other capitals in low class.
Sure, but it takes a long time and they're expensive, and then they're locked into that wormhole and you can never leave with them. So there are very few wormhole entities that I would think would build more than a couple oracles. I mean, there's just no reason to, because it's just it's a waste of money at that point, because you can never
Before,
do anything with them afterwards.
yeah, but here's the thing: like, it doesn't take that long to build enough or to get enough minerals to pay back that investment. It's a setup. It's a long-term setup thing, but it is definitely a concept that I think people are going to take advantage of. And
Yeah.
it's the question is it going to be so lucrative and so safe? Because once you have that presence there, then you are really hard to assault. You have full control of capital escalation in that wormhole.
Now, again, I think that the moon goo side of this for wormholes is not necessarily all that important, because it sounds like it's going to be, I mean, what do they say here? These moons will contain a randomized selection of upgraded standard mineral ore variants, as well as some of the most common varieties of moon goo ores in lower quantities than those available in low sec and null sec. However, take the moon goo piece out of it, right? You're still going to be getting minerals and mineral based ores out there that you can go after, which is stuff that you would not then have to ship in, right?
Yeah, so this is the thing. They are creating a Delvish system in every low class wormhole here. That is my sort of worry. That is the risk. And I'm sure they thought about that and ran the numbers and were like, it's probably acceptable. But it's risky.
You're sure of that? You think they actually thought it through at that level?
I'm hoping, Billy. I'm hoping.
Well, that's what people assumed when the oracles first got rebalanced, right?
That's the thing. When you look at what the problem with Rorks is, the player reaction to them and how we really embraced them wholeheartedly, and that skill injectors were a thing that kind of got forgotten, could instantly make like capital super pilots, right?
I mean, I'll just say right now, I really hope that a lot of low-class wormholers start building tons of oracles, because that's great content. I'll just throw
Is
that
it?
out there.
You
Yeah,
wanna
it
go
is.
rolling into two wormholes where they have 20 carriers they can just drop on you. Like, this is the thing. There's going to be a different group of people that go in. It's going to be a very different idea. It is going to be like, and I won't be surprised if Goons or Droneland residents or PanFam or Guardians of the Galaxy start shoving a bunch of industrialists into C2s with 500 billion-ish worth of stuff in there. And yeah, you'll get kills and content out of it, but I think you'll end up with a Delve-like situation where they're going to have the umbrella on system.
I mean, I tell you, wormholes, there's so many empty wormholes right now. Wormhole phase is massive, and a lot of it's empty and it's random when you roll into it. If a lot of nullsecers decide they want to flood into the low-class wormholes, that is fantastic for wormholers, because that's more content for us to roll into, more things for us to fight, more things for us to kill, and more things just to die to too. I mean, that's just how it goes. But having more people in wormhole space is never a bad thing. Just never. It never is.
I'll tell
I like
you know
how
what? I'm glad to hear that.
I like how you have a classless society in wormholes.
I mean, we can get into wormhole politics on another day, because that's a
Yeah,
whole
let's
other
do
can
that.
of worms. But
I wanna-
I tell you, every time we see a Rorqual and Chain, it is an exciting day.
That's why we
I'll
dragged
take
you
it.
on.
Well,
We're
this is the
dragging
thing
you
now.
on to the panel here so that we can get more information on wormholes going into the future. All right, Dirk, we have maybe one last point to make on the changes that came through, the one that Billy made there about anchoring.
Go for it, Dirk.
On anchor, well, I mean, if he wants to
believe in you,
if he
Dirk.
wants to cover the anchoring one, yeah, I was just going to bring up just a really quick one that asset safety is also a part of this, and they are looking to put a 0.5% recovery cost asset safety fee, even if you're asset safetying to another structure within the same solar system. So there's always been this thing of, well, if you go in and you blow up this thing here, then it doesn't matter, they can just asset safety over to some other structure in the system, right? Well, at least there will now be a cost associated with that.
I like this change, but I think I would like to see it come with some ability to move stuff from one citadel to another more easily when they're not reinforced at all. Because this is the one thing that I've really gotten annoyed with on the industrial side of the structures, is hauling stuff back and forth. It's not enticing gameplay to sit in jump freighters multi-boxing for like an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Like, doing your own logistics in a system is surprisingly not rewarding.
Okay.
So did Billy want to cover the
Sure.
refit on anchor?
So as your previous commenter regarding wormholes there brought up, one of the main ways in which people force fights nowadays is by dropping what are essentially troll citadels. They drop Raideroos or Astra House, or even in some more tactically significant situations, they drop Fortizars. And as the dropper, as the, let's say, attacker in the situation, they are allowed to choose the time of the engagement. They're allowed to choose the location, and they're allowed to choose the place. And when with these new changes, what they're suggesting is that every citadel will be given a 5-minute invulnerability period after it finishes its anchor period, after the 24 hours or 6 days or whatever, where it can now be refitted, and you will then be on the initial timer fighting over what is essentially a final timer. And this is such a monstrous change, and I cannot describe how painful it is, how annoying, how much of a waste of time it is to have to large form for every citadel timer as it is. And what they're proposing now is to make it that much more annoying, that much worse. And it's the consequences of it are pretty severe, because what it means is you can't use caps at all, basically, or they have to be in such a massively organized form to kill an anchoring structure, because that was one of the main advantages of the defender of your space or the attacker of the citadel, is that you could use caps against anchoring Fortizars and such, because there was not that massively oppressive, I'm just going to freely kill your caps with 50,000 DPS that's basically untouchable. So but with this change, what they're effectively doing is making any citadel drop a final timer for a citadel, and if you form hard enough that the citadel dies, they don't even have to refit it, because they're like, oh, we'll just save the money on the refit and put it on the next one. And being that the citadel refit in many cases as much as the Astra House, that's pretty oppressive as it is. It's just a horrible change that I can't believe nobody thought like, we need to make citadels more difficult to remove. We need to make it's just 2 steps backward in terms of the regression of citadel spam.
I agree completely.
You can look at it this way: like, how many keep stars have died before being anchored, and how many keep stars have died once they're online? Like, and now they're making it to the point where every keep star will have that combat potential of all the ones that are online straight away.
Yeah,
my guts say this wasn't thought through.
I think it solved a problem they were looking at and it was brought up at Vegas. Somebody was like, well, what if when it's anchoring, or that initial timer, you just keep shooting it and they can never fit it? And it's like, well, I guess that's a justifiable thing, but at the same time, that's a really hard thing to pull off, to keep something above damage or paused, but not getting reinforced for an extended period of time. And if you don't form to kill that tiny amount of DPS coming at it, do I care if your structure is not fit? You haven't put in the effort to get it to the point where you can fit it anyways.
I'm confused. What were they complaining about?
So here's the thing: if you shoot the structure, you can't fit it. So if you anchor, this is under the previous system, if you anchor the structure and then it is vulnerable immediately upon anchoring, they can start shooting the structure and you never get a chance to fit it. And they can string that out until they can get a proper form up.
In fact, it can, even if there's no one there to oppose you, you can get spies in your fleet who just occasionally poke the new onlining thing, so that you are stuck out there and you can't fit your citadel, even when you have no enemies in sight.
You mean to pause the repair timer?
Yeah,
and you just warp your fleet away.
Yeah, this is a solution in search of a problem, I think, because I don't buy it.
Yeah, like the fact that you could kill them before onlining was actually like a really good mechanic in my opinion.
It was the most important mechanic that I can think of regarding them, because
Now, just to kind of
trying to kill them afterwards.
just to kind of wrap out the structures thing here, because I think we're about ready to get ready to actually wrap the show.
Yep.
But one of the things that had been called for by a lot of people out there was basically to make it somehow easier to get rid of zombie structures, right? So basically structures that weren't requiring any fuel to use, anything like that. So what they're proposing is putting in something that you have to have a structure. You have to have a service module online consuming fuel, or if somebody comes and reinforces that particular structure, it will go straight to final timer.
If you're going to mention it's a zombie structure solution, you should also point out the other solution that they added to the game at the same time, which is the forward operating bases / shipyards. Because those are also taking down structures that are maybe not sufficiently defended.
So this is an unfair buff to NPCs?
I didn't say that. I'm saying they put in two solutions at the same time, which is usually in game design a bad idea. You want to do one and see what it does, and then do a second one and see what that does. You get bad data if you try to throw in two at the same time.
As far as I know right now, the NPCs aren't actually going to kill the structure. So they'll just put it into reinforce, and then they screw off. If they're upgrading that to actually have it return for a timer, then cool. But
now, what they're calling this though is they're calling high power mode if you have a service module online, or low power, and that will actually show in the name of the of the structure out there. So it will say low power and alert you to the fact that this is something that if you reinforce it, will go straight to final timer on the next reinforcement.
But as far as I'm aware, though, like, it still will take just as long to kill as an online one. Like, yes, you have to do one less actual fleet form for it, but if you roll the dice wrong, you can still end up having to wait 9 to 10 days before you can finish that thing off.
Okay, we are a little bit over time, so I want to say thank you to Harvey real quick. He's taken off.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's been a pleasure. You're all, people I've watched on these podcasts a lot, and now I'm finally here myself. I feel it's a bit funny, but thank you very much for having me. Got to go. It's been cool.
Good to have
Thanks.
you.
We'll have you on again. Appreciate you coming on.
I love that.
All right, Dirk, are you finished with structures?
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a lot more that's going to get discussed regarding structures, over time. Maybe between now and the 13th, we will probably see some updates from CCP about, maybe what they're dialing back or not, and then of course the actual release on the 13th. But it is coming. You're looking at 3 weeks basically.
Exciting.
All right. Yeah. All right. So we're going to thank Manic, Wrath, Apache, Robert, and X-Tards for subscriptions. Thanks, guys, very much for the support. You can also support through Patreon to help pay for the podcast's expenses as we continue to upgrade the show. Wanted to say thanks to everybody that showed up today to watch. I hate to cut a show off when we were nearly 400 viewers, but it's time to go. And I want to thank Kiskora. Welcome to the panel. I hope you had a good time there.
Yeah, it's been fun. I like spreading the gospel of Bob to all of you nullsec types.
That's great. We're glad to have you. And Killa B, I think you're probably not awake, and I wouldn't blame you because you were out late last night. That's
I'm still here. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
My
As
God,
usual.
you survived.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on and telling us. We're excited to see what happens with 9Tech4 on Tuesday. Mark your calendars. And Opner and Plex, thanks, guys, very much. And Billy, thanks very much for and thanks for writing that stuff you did on Reddit. It definitely looks like it sank into CCP because there's already some adjustment going on. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you,
All
boys.
All right, that's it. That's all we got time for this week. And we'll see you again next week on Talking in Stations.
And let me just slip in and say thank you to Manic Sar1, Wrath Katan, Mapache Kaboom, Robert 98374, and Exardia.
All right.